Okay, welcome to Game with the Colonel. I'm Sean Moran, and today I'm just going to do a quick run through of The War of 1812 by Columbia Games, and this is their newer edition. Um, I actually have the old edition, like from the 70s, when it was Gamma 2 Games out of Vancouver, and I actually played it this year with my son, but I had to get this one because good old Columbia, they put 25% off after Gen Con, and so I was able to get this for like $37 or something like that, and even after shipping to Winnipeg, it was a good deal. So this is I think one of the first war games that Columbia did, and it is quite simple. You can play it pretty quickly. It's obviously it's a block game. Uh, Blocks are represented by they represent naval counters and also ground forces for both the English and the United States. It's a dice game and follows the standards of the Columbia Games ABC, but in this case they call it F1. So the original game you could actually, if I recall, you had to roll sixes to get hits. In this one you roll ones. And what is kind of neat about this game, if I can find the right counter, there are a couple of F2s, specifically the cavalry. You can see that they've got an F2, as well as artillery have an F2, which gives you, you can, if you get the right forces in the right spot, you can have a bit of an advantage that way. Okay, let's do a quick review of the map. This is obviously Lake Erie over here. The south here is obviously the United States, and you can see the United States cities and towns are in blue. Here's Detroit. Here's Erie, Buffalo, Fort Niagara, Sackett's Harbor. Let's go with Plattsburgh over here. I haven't named them all, but just to give you an idea. And then on the other side, on the British side and the Canadian side there's Fort Erie. There is Amherstburg. There's York. And bigger ones up here is Montreal and, of course, Quebec, right up there in the corner. Oh, I shouldn't forget Kingston over here. You can see I've actually been playing this a few turns, so I've actually been able to get the Americans up and take Kingston. So, how does the game play? There's 10 turns, and then you have a winter period. And essentially, and it plays actually for what is... I believe it's 3 years, 1812, 1813, 1814. And you roll to see who goes first or who has initiative. And then, unlike other games, it's almost like plays like chess. You can do one movement. You can do two things rather. You can do a naval build or movement, and each side has actually a naval base where they can actually build. In fact, I think the Americans, it's Sackett's Harbor on Lake Ontario. I forgot to mention the lakes. Lake Ontario. And it's, gosh, I want to say it's, oh, I forgot now if it's Detroit or Erie. I think it's Erie here on Lake Erie. And then on the British side, it's Kingston on Lake Ontario. And definitely it's Amherstburg. I'm sure it's that on Lake Erie. And I keep forgetting Lake Champlain over here because I guess not much goes on over here. But anyways, this is the Ticonderoga is the American one, and I believe La Colle is the naval base there. So with the two move, you can let's pretend I'm the British here for a second. You can do a build like in your actual naval base, or if you've already got or if you've already had a unit there like last turn, you can flip them up the next turn and then actually move them out onto the lake, and that means you control the lake. There's some advantages to that. If you control the lake, it means you can actually move across it. You can move forces across with blocks. There's limitations to that. And then in this case, if the Americans build and move on to the lake, then you have a naval battle. And it's done, the same way as the land battles are done in terms of rolling dice and whatnot. A little harder with naval battles, though, because it's harder to build ships. So it's kind of... This doesn't sound funny. It's kind of dicey because you only have F1s for those navies, so it can go on for a fair amount to try to see who's going to win. So that's the naval part, the ground part is you actually start with a certain number of blocks that you draw from your draw pile, and any town or city that has a 2 or more, you actually have to put a block in, and then you can, whatever you got remaining, you can put, group together. So when you actually do the ground movement, you can move basically to the next town. That's it. If there is enemy forces in that town, then you have a battle. Then you play it exactly like you would normal Columbia games. The defender goes first, then followed by the attacker. And you can, but the thing is, it's not like a 3-round thing like in a lot of the other games. You can go until you're all dead or you win, or one group can retreat, but the other group gets pursuit fire, and the pursuit fire is like at F3, so it's a bit messy there. If you want to, you're probably staying to fight or sacrificing units is what you're probably doing. What else? So yeah, so one naval move, one group move, and then you advance the turn. And then when you get to winter, the numbers that are actually on the towns represent how many blocks can be in that town. If you don't, and if you are in excess, you actually have to eliminate those blocks. And then as far as reinforcements go, so the next year, like if you can see here, the Americans will get out of Albany here, they're allowed to draw 2 blocks from their draw pile. And over here, in Pittsburgh, they can draw 2 blocks out of the draw pile, and they come in there. Whereas the Canadians, this is upside down, you're not going to see it, they can only draw 3 blocks in 1813. But in 1814, they can draw 7 blocks, which I guess signifies the British starting to throw extra forces into this war, later on in 1814. So what sort of typically happens is that the Americans kind of want to get some good hits in the beginning, because they know eventually that the British are going to get those extra forces later on in 1814. So victory conditions, basically at the end of every 10th turn of each year, you check to see if you've met the victory conditions, and it's 1 victory point for each army block in play, and 1 for warships and, warships and the Indian block, which is a green block, have no victory points. You get 2 victory points for each lake player controls, and the VP value of all the enemy towns occupied by the army blocks. Warships can't hold the blocks. So essentially what happens is you've got to get 10 victory points more than the other side. And so essentially, if you're occupying enemy towns, then you get a point for that. And then, as it said there in the rules, you get a point for each block you have on the board, as well as 2 victory points for each lake. The rules are pretty basic. What is it? 5 pages, and then the last page is talking about strategic notes and whatnot. The Indian block, let's see if I can find it. That's kind of interesting. So it's basically got a green sticker. So if the British take Detroit, they get the Indian block. It goes into play right away. There is a note about American militia, which are represented by, let me see if I can find one. Come on now. American militia, they've got sort of a tan kind of sticker. They have to roll whether they can actually move into Canada. If they roll a 1, 2, or 3, it means that the block refuses to move. Otherwise, it can move normally. So that's something that the Americans have to look at. The thing is, though, is you don't know how many militia you're going to get, because you draw blocks blind on the setup, and then at the end of each year, you get to draw blocks again blind. And in this case, I would have drawn 2 militia, right? But you can see there's some artillery with that F2, and then just the Continentals represented just with the United States flag on them. So it's a fun little game. It's an easy game to play. I wanted it because I wanted to get I wanted this version because I wanted the revised version, and I just couldn't beat the price. It was such a great price with that 25% off deal. Now I've got one at the cabin, and I've got one here. And look at the map too. They've done a great job. Really colorful. Whereas the old map is you know, it's white and has a has some dotted lines on it and that sort of thing. But I know I'll probably still play the old version. I think one of these days, when I get them both in the same spot, perhaps I'll do a quick sort of comparison in terms of blocks and map and that sort of thing. But definitely would recommend, especially for a brand new person into the wargaming hobby. This would be a fun game to teach them. I know I have a particular friend of mine that probably would not want to play this because he doesn't like the chess sort of only move some of your blocks once. So, he'd rather move everything in some of those more I don't know, more involved games. But this one's just a fun one that you can play within an hour and teach your kids how to play. And I don't know, it's a fun game. So very happy to have it. So yeah, that's it for me. Columbia Games, War of 1812. Take care.